everyone. Welcome to CFO IQ. I'm your host, Andy Zizas. According to Wikipedia, entrepreneurship is the process of identifying market opportunities, assembling resources, and taking calculated risks to create value, often through innovation and new venture creation. Key characteristics of entrepreneurs include resilience, vision, and leadership. Key skills include financial management, marketing, hiring, and strategic planning. The benefits of entrepreneurship include the obvious, autonomy and potential high earnings, while the disadvantages can include high stress, long hours, and financial risk. On today's show, I'm joined by an impressive finance executive with an unusual career twist. Joining me today on CFO IQ is Natasha Dillon, CFO of FundFi Merchant Funding. FundFi Merchant Funding is a leader in providing specialized revenue-based financing solutions for small to mid-sized businesses across the United States and Canada. Today, Natasha and I will discuss the CFO entrepreneur. Natasha, welcome to CFO IQ.
Thank you for having me.
So, Natasha, you've had a very interesting career, having spent time in insurance. You've been at companies like AllianceBernstein, London Town. And in our previous discussions, you've described yourself not just as a CFO or even an entrepreneur, but as a serial entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. So I love that. And given the atypical path your career has taken as a finance executive and otherwise, what led you to become a serial entrepreneur and what ultimately brought you into finance?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a part of me since I was a kid. I always was interested in making money, finding ways to solve problems, be creative. I probably had one of the last existing paper routes in my town when I was a kid. I babysat. My grandmother was a real estate agent, and I would offer to mow the lawns of the houses that were for sale. I just was always interested in the hustle, if you will. When I was in college, I quickly moved my class load to nights, and I was an insurance broker, like you mentioned, during the day. And I would spend my free time stuffing envelopes, working on the sales, and I just loved it. I loved all of the excitement of it, and just doing all of the different things to get to the next level. But my mindset was very solopreneur at the time. It was only me and what I was doing. When I was almost graduated college, I met a guy that I was writing insurance for, and he had his own business. And he mentioned he was wanting to purchase a portfolio based off the business he did, and just said he didn't have the time to set it up. So I offered to help him, and I got the itch. I learned with failure at the time how to set up a business, manage all the moving parts. And it really felt natural at the time. But being at college, my dream was always to work in finance. I've always been a math nerd. And I loved the market. My dream was to move to New York, work in investment banking. And I did that. And then I eventually left that to go to grad school and just follow the typical IB path. But I then again met someone else that was a real veteran serial entrepreneur. He was just absolutely had so many businesses simultaneously as well as in the past. And I just really admired him and all the work he did. And now having employees of my own, I don't think you can necessarily teach grit, but I think he truly taught me grit, and it has stayed with me to this day. And when I was graduating graduate school, he asked me what I wanted to do, and I had, in one of my research times and what have you, had found this need for a nail care product. Without getting too deep into the weeds of that conversation, but I told him that, and he said, "Let's do it. I think we can do it together." So he was sort of my financial backing. I did a lot of, and also tremendous amount of the workload as well. He taught me so much about businesses and what to do. And we started that, and we grew that business internationally and exited. And while finance was an obvious part of that business, I ultimately found myself back into the world of finance, just not investment banking.
Wow. So it started out with paper route and mowing lawns. It's really in your blood. I look back when I was a kid, it wasn't a paper route and mowing lawns. It was shoveling snow and mowing lawns. And I think I had my first lemonade stand when I was 6. And I remember back then lemonade, I sold cups of lemonade for 5 cents a cup.
Oh, wow.
Long, long
What do they go for now? $5 probably.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you've got a great background and a solid entrepreneurial pedigree. Let's talk about some of the things you built. You built a business before you ever had the CFO title, right? So how did that entrepreneurial experience shape the way you think about finance differently than someone who more traditionally came up through, the regular CFO path?
Yeah, I mean, I think even in every business there's finance, right? And it doesn't matter how small or large you have to manage some sort of finance. And I think
Agreed.
just
Agreed. Yep.
having to wear now in my current role, just having to wear two different hats at the very minimum, I would say. We're still a small company, so there's several hats that have to be worn. But I can't really speak to what somebody comes up the traditional path is like, because that certainly was not my experience. But I think with my different experiences and role now, it just lends to the flexibility and the ability to be able to pull on different levers as the co-founder and current owner. I can utilize different parts of the business to get to our ultimate goal. We moved from an investor model about 2.5 years ago to an institutional model, and we had high net worth individuals originally. In our industry, there's a very standard process that's followed for how you move in that process. But I was really concerned about the lack of diversification of our capital. I was in investment banking in 2008. Other past experiences of where having one source of capital feels scary to me. So we wanted to keep our investors, our high net worth individuals, engaged with us. So we launched into Canada, which was out of the jurisdiction of our institutional partner, and we offered our investors other opportunities to continue to be with us and to invest with us and to keep them engaged with us. So it just gives us a lot of opportunity to be nimble in other places where maybe a CFO in a traditional sense wouldn't be able to be.
In your last comment, you talked about how you were moving away from a sole source provider and you were basically in the process of managing risk. So I find that very interesting because as a founder, you're built to take risk, but as a CFO, your role is to manage it. Most CFOs, in fact, are hired for the express purpose of managing risk. So in your current role, how do you reconcile those two identities in your daily decision making, both as risk taker and risk mitigator?
Yeah, absolutely. I think throughout the years, I have been comfortable with taking those risks. But a lot of founders, I find, think of their business as their baby, where I like to think of it more as a relationship where you have to make changes, you have to pivot or possibly exit. When assessing risk, I'm not making decisions that would bring me down with the sinking ship, if you will. But you're absolutely right. We have to make decisions that propel growth. So I would say calculated risk. Certainly an area I lean more towards the calculated side than the risk side, always have. But thankfully, I have my business partner and other great resources as soundboards and ways for us to get out of our own comfort zone on both sides of the equation.
Okay, that makes an awful lot of sense. So I'm thinking about the whole risk idea, but I also want to ask you about how you handle yourself when you're sitting across from an institutional capital partner, for example. How does your background as business owner, risk taker, versus traditional CFO change that conversation?
Yeah, I think ultimately capital partners like founder-led businesses. A major concern with that is, of course, challenges with compliance, covenants, reporting, and portfolio analytics. Initially, I think it was a comfort level I had to bring to the table with my partners that support me. I believe heavily in having the right team and people in the seats that know more or different than me, with a strong accounting, legal, compliance team. That was what really drove us to be able to bring ourselves to that table. We also came prepared and already had that infrastructure before seeking institutional capital. So I think it just put them at ease to be able to work with us.
Okay, that makes sense. So I want to stay with the founder CFO idea. When you've got to wear two hats like that, they may very often compete, not so much from perspective of how someone would view you, perhaps, but more in terms of how you handle a circumstance. So how do you know which hat to wear on a given day or in a given circumstance?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, my day is no 2 days are the same, and constantly being pulled in many different directions. I personally just try very heavily to rely on my plan and what my goals are, what I'm trying to work on. Um, you know, Work very hard to stay focused on that while attempting to obviously handle fires that come out of every end of the
Sure.
business.
I'm sure you're putting out a lot of fires. Yeah.
Yeah. But I believe heavily in delegating and trusting my team and what it is that, we have to accomplish, and day-to-day tasks can be handled a lot of the times by them. But that's really my, my ultimate goal, something I worked hard on for a long time. I mentioned before, the solopreneur. I mean, I really came up really working, individually, and it's been a real learning process of working with a team and being able to develop a team that also is invested in the business as much as us.
Sure, sure. So, but Natasha, as a founder, co-founder in this case, you have to take a long view of your business, right? But if you were a traditional CFO, be accountable to the historic numbers. And my guess in terms of you'd not only be rearview mirror, you'd be forward looking. And that's what most of today's CFOs are. They're really forward looking as well. How do you balance protecting the future of the company and at the same time making sure you hit near term performance metrics?
Yeah, I don't necessarily see it as a misalignment between being the co-founder and CFO. There's certain conflict to manage, but I believe having the data and information allows me to pivot and make decisions to guide us to either a new direction or stay on course with what it is that we're working on and goals to hit. Our business is a little bit of a different structure than probably a traditional business, where we can make those decisions to pull back or to move forward. It just comes with either a decision of consequence or not consequence, and we just have to weigh that and determine what makes the most sense. But we're constantly making those changes, based on the economic environment. We're providing capital to small, mid-sized businesses across the country and Canada. So we have to take a lot of different factors into play when we're doing that. And our goals are always moving targets, but obviously with a long view as well.
I can appreciate that. So you mentioned institutional partners. As a founder-led company, as a small business yourself, how do you ensure that you're taken seriously in those kind of conversations with, for example, institutional capital partners? And what do you wish more founders knew going into those kind of discussions?
Yeah, great question. I think being prepared for the change in operation, um, from the reporting that is needed down to just the business model. Like, for example, I mentioned again, our business is a little bit different, but our business model had to change tremendously. We were a margin business and when we got institutional capital, we became a volume business. But if I could do it over again, I would have set everything up from the very beginning as an institutional grade. There was a lot of work handling backfill based off of setting it up as a just my partner and I reviewing the finances to now many people viewing the finances, and so that would definitely be a recommendation. Is just imagine you are already institutional grade when you start.
Basically, imagine where you want to go before you start and set it in motion so you can go there.
Right. I mean, to be honest, I don't even know if we had that in our plans in the beginning. So, I think, just knowing that that the growth is for it to grow, that's the plan.
Very interesting. So what's the next chapter of growth look like for FundFi? How are you building financial infrastructure now to be ready for that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel strongly that we offer products for small, mid-sized businesses, and constantly feel that removing that friction for them is essential. And as we continue to grow, we continue to partner with institutions that align in value with us and can help us get to that next step to continue to provide capital in our current business structure, as well as new products to several businesses in US, Canada, and potentially further in the future. I think a big development for us is technology. I think technology in the way that it is sort of coming to market right now gives us a lot of opportunities and to remove that friction and to get capital faster to our clients than it ever has in the past.
So that sounds like a very exciting future. Before I let you go, I want to ask you one more question, because I love this dialogue and I think we can go on for a very long time about it. But most of the CFOs we encounter kind of fantasize about entrepreneurship, and only some of them actually enter entrepreneurship. Few of them as early in their careers as you have, and as you've done successfully, apparently. So for those CFOs and even other executives who are considering the entrepreneurial path, what guidance would you offer them before they start?
I would say certainly to love what you do and be passionate about it. I mean, really, I think for me, if I'm passionate every day to wake up and to solve those problems. Maybe by the end of the day, I don't feel that way, but certainly the next morning when I get up, I'm like, okay, time to tackle that problem. So I do love the problem solving. I think just being passionate about the business. In the past, some businesses that I've been involved in and started, I loved the work of the business, but I didn't really love the business. So now it's a love on both sides.
That's great advice. Natasha, this has been a very, very enlightening conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your insights on CFO IQ.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you also very much for joining Natasha Dillon of FundFi Merchant Funding and me today here on CFO IQ. If you'd like to learn more about Natasha Dillon or her company, visit FundFi online, or you can visit CFOIQ.com. If you'd like to appear in a CFO IQ on-camera interview, visit CFOIQ.com as well and get in touch with me. Thanks very much for watching. This is Andy Zizas for CFO IQ.
For booking inquiries, please visit CFOIQ.com or email andrew.zizas@CFOintel.com.